Hello, teachers, and welcome to the Music Teacher Mastermind podcast. My name is Jaclyn Mrozek, and you can call me Jackie, and I will be your facilitator. Each week, I love to come alongside fellow music educators for a little mastermind of our own, where we tackle challenges, explore new opportunities, help to solve problems, and hopefully offer some inspiration. This week, we are diving into part 2 of a special topic: teaching visually impaired students. If you have not yet had a chance to listen to last week's episode 17, featuring Dr. Scott Price and Dr. Elizabeth Davis-Everhart, I highly recommend pausing this episode and checking that one out first. You will get a solid foundation for what we'll cover today. And for those of you continuing with us for part 2, we're going to take a deeper dive into keyboard geography, a key area in teaching visually impaired students. In addition, you'll hear some really clever improvisation ideas and resources that you'll definitely want to consider for all of your students. You will also hear some incredible tips from Dr. Price and Dr. Davis-Everhart. And the great thing is that these tips aren't just limited to teaching visually impaired students. In fact, many of the ideas we discuss could be useful for all of your students, regardless of any physical condition. So I am so glad that you joined us here today. Let's get started.
And that was how his granddaughter, who also had some developmental delays, was able to figure out where the keys were and the specific names of the keys.
I'm just going to go ahead and share with you what we're dealing with right now, because I'm writing down all kinds of notes right now. But getting her to feel the white keys and to kind of go up and then to the black keys to feel the difference between, she has perfect pitch. I should throw that in. It's kind of thrown a whole wrench in everything just because she's very good at just playing the keys until she finds what she wants. But so getting her to feel those key shapes, to recognize, okay, am I on the group of 2 black keys or am I on the group of 3 black keys? So I'm curious how you enforce feeling the key shapes.
That's a great question. I typically just give my student more time. And then I'm big on observation. And so I watch their fingers like a hawk to see how their body is communicating what they understand. Right. And then realizing what their process is. And if that's what works for them, I typically don't change it. Or again, I just become the perennial student and say, okay, how do you find that? How do you feel that? Because I need your help to help me find it as well. Yes. And then sometimes I've had some students who, when they're trying to gauge distance, would sometimes put their thumb on the fall board, on the wood below the keys, and then measure distance this way with their hand until they were able to more readily find and identify those intervals and spaces without that.
Yes. I often will just ask my students, how did you find that? I asked a student just yesterday, how did you figure that out? Because I was just, and I observe them like crazy, but I love to ask them, how did you find that? How did you figure that out? That was so good. And I always frame it in a very positive way, like I'm praising them for figuring out, and will you help me learn how you did that? Something that my students taught me several years ago, specifically about finding the 2 black keys. And again, this is something I had never considered, but when you're on the 2 black keys, you have these 2 gaps on either side, B and C and E and F, because that is where there are no black keys. So I had a student that would literally put both of his hands and feel for both of those spaces, and that's where the 2 black keys are. And so I would have him use both hands to find the 2 black keys going up and down, and that really helped him because he could feel those. He called them gaps on either side, and that's always, and then he got comfortable using just one hand, and we made a game out of it. You know, how many can you find? Oh, you found 2 today. That was so good. But he used both hands to find the 2 black keys, and that seemed to really help because he could feel the distance of how close they were versus the 3 black keys. There is still E and F, 3 black keys, and then B and C on top. And that helped him immensely, and we never had to never had to work on it again. But he figured that out. It wasn't me telling him, try this. I saw him have both hands up there. And so I was like, oh, this is brilliant. So that is what I have done ever since. And again, I don't really change if I see what they're doing is working, or if I can tell that they're close to figuring it out, I just let them go and tell them, if you get frustrated, please let me know and I'll help you. But that seems to really help to use both hands to find the two black keys at first. It also makes them feel a little less anxious, I think, because it's like both of my hands can do this and it's okay.
Oh, that's great. That's just great. And I observe a lot of the same where I'll see the hand go up into the black key plane and then down and back out as they're finding where they need to be on the white keys as well. Mm-hmm. And it also speaks, Melissa Martiros, who's another wonderful colleague, she always says that all behavior is communication. And so all of these things that my student are doing, they are showing me how they think and how they understand. And I need to watch that like a hawk because I'm going to learn something new every second of this lesson.
Man, you guys, okay. My mind just kind of exploded just now. It sounds to me, in your experiences, the students are more drawn to going to the black keys and then going down to the white keys. I mean, and I understand that every student's different, but I guess this is going with the student being the leader, which I have to admit, in this situation, I don't think I have been. I think I've been trying to push her to do this, but she naturally goes to the black keys first.
Well, we do that too. We probably just don't think about it in the way they do, but when we go to play a D major scale, we are going and finding that position and then beginning. Mm-hmm. It's right. Just, we look at it in terms of black and white instead of more of a tactical thing sometimes, or a tactile, not tactical, but tactile. Although I guess some of that learning can be tactical as well.
I was just going to say, it definitely can. But something else to remember as well, just because students are, our goal is for them to kind of independently play across the keyboard, it doesn't mean that one way is better or more correct than another. I have one student that needed to use his left hand to feel the two black keys while he played all the C's on the piano. And he needed that kind of physical reassurance, and all of the anxieties, all the behaviors just dissipated because he had that other hand to just feel for where that was. Then he got more comfortable and he would use the fingers he wasn't playing with to feel for the two black keys. But, just telling him it's okay to use both of your hands to feel where you're going, or even saying it in kind of an affirmation. I see you using both hands to find the keys, and that is very smart. Like, I love telling them that they're doing something smart. So it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, I don't think. If it works, then I'm okay with that because it's still helping them become independent and confident.
Yeah, I think that affirmation and validation is a wonderful point, Elizabeth, and that we can't do that enough for someone who's scrambling to figure out what's happened. And also, teachers shouldn't be afraid to do hand over hand teaching. I just always explain to the parents, a lot of this teaching is going to have to happen with me showing the student how to move their hands and their arms to do things, and then just asking for the student's consent. Can I touch your hand, or can you put your hand over mine and feel how I'm moving? And I'll help you find those things. And if at some point you don't need me anymore, tell me you don't need me anymore, because I'll be happy that you got it on your own.
Yes. Another thing I have done specifically with just getting comfortable with the feel of the keys and the placement of the keys and geography wise is I will send home a laminated keyboard and a stack of silly putty. And the keyboard has white keys and black keys, and the parents will put silly putty on all the 2 and 3 black keys so the students can just feel how bumpy they are, because again, that word bumpy just resonates with little kids. They also think it's sort of goofy. And so I will often use, especially if we're learning like pentascales, like D major, where the middle finger needs to go up to a black key or an upper key, I will often use silly putty, in an activity with them to help them feel that all of the other fingers are on the smooth keys and there's one, and even E major, and I'll have them rearrange the silly putty. Okay, can you put it for your E major pattern? And they love using the silly putty because it doesn't necessarily feel as strong as a key, but it has that difference in height that they're used to.
Wonderful idea. Wonderful idea.
It's great
and I
for
think,
chords.
Elizabeth, early you said something about improvisation. And I love to use that as a learning tool because it's making sound. It's actually doing something instead of a lot of verbal talking. And I know teachers are saying, well, I don't have an improvisation background. It's really hard to do. But if you play two keys in a row or even one key, you've improvised, you've made a sound. And so we should encourage that kind of creativity in our students because not only is it fun, it puts their learning into context. And it's also a measure of whether they understand what they're doing as well by being able to make music with what they do.
And a good way to start improvising, like Dr. Price just said, is what is the student currently learning? If you're trying to learn the two black keys, even with a student who does not have a visual impairment, then improvise on the two black keys and have them play going up, going down, left and right. Look at how many things you can reinforce just by playing two black keys. And, it doesn't mean you have to come up with this elaborate plan, but I love improvising with my students, and it's something we do absolutely every lesson. And it's a great way for me to observe what did they know, how are they doing, how comfortable are they? And inevitably, not only does improvising together give me a way to actively assess their progress and how things are going, but it is a huge confidence booster to students. I had a young student last week who has some learning challenges. And at the end of his lesson, we did a very simple improvisation, just using C, D, and E with our right hand. And at the end, he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm turning into Mozart." And he left that lesson so proud of himself. It was nothing elaborate, but his mom texted me days later that he is still improvising. And what had we been having trouble with? Finding the C on all the pianos. So now he thinks he has this confidence boost. He's got it.
It is a real confidence boost. And I had another student who was usually, he was a teenager, so he was kind of glum most of the time, and he had autism as well. And we did some improvisation, and he just kind of sat there and he said, "I'm encouraged now."
Wow.
And hearing that come from this young man, he wouldn't have said that if he really didn't feel encouraged.
That's beautiful.
Well, you kind of wipe your tears away first, then you say, "I'm glad you're encouraged. I'm your best friend. Let me help you."
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. I love these ideas. Another thing that I've realized is it's really easy to overthink these lessons and what you're doing, because so many times, like even just you talking, Elizabeth, about improvising on the group of two black keys, I do that with all my students. So why would I not think to do that with my little girl? Right? But I've never thought about that before.
You're so right. We do overthink. And I think, to use the word think again, when we look at a piece of music, there are just so many concepts, so many layers, so many skills involved in one piece that when we look at it, it's a lot for us to process. And for us to have to switch our communication method takes a huge pivot in our teaching style, because 95% of what's on the page doesn't matter to our student. It does not matter that they now have stems on the notes or that they now have to work on directional reading. That doesn't matter if the student has a visual impairment. So we have to kind of be their filter and say, okay, I need to only tell them what they need to know. I need to not overthink so that they will not overthink. So we kind of need to be that filter for them to just tell them what to do, show them how to do it. And that's all they need to know. So we need to be, I think, that filter for them.
Yeah. And, I think all the overthinking, it comes from a really good place. It's just, we have all of this lesson planning skill and we've got the knowledge and we want to try and do it in the best way for the student. But I always have to remember that as uncomfortable as it is for the student, I'm also in this huge area of dark unknowns. And I always tell my graduate students that, look, You can have the lesson plan, you can have the knowledge, but you've got to realize that a lot of a piano lesson is improvisational chaos, and it's your job to know how to steer the tornado here and there.
Man, I need to put that quote up on my wall to remind myself. Okay, so let's talk about when you actually do start making music. Do you guys usually recommend starting with rote pieces? You're talking about pentascales, Elizabeth. I'm just kind of wondering because there's no method, right? We do a lot of rote. And so I was just curious if I'm on the right path here or if you guys do something different.
Again, it's kind of back to what Dr. Price said. If it's working, then that's great.
Okay.
What I tend to do is I have probably 6 or 8 different method series that I use depending on the student. And so I will assess them and we will do lots of improvising together and lots of exploring at the piano. So I can kind of observe where they are and build some really good rapport with them as we, in those first few lessons, kind of learn each other. And then we'll think through the methods and the things I currently have. And usually I will just choose a conglomeration of a few of them, and we will go through the music in the same order, the same sequence as I would with a student without a visual impairment, just differently, the same but different. And lots of rote pieces.
Great ideas. I do a lot of the same and usually a combination of things. There is a company out there called Dancing Dots, which was founded by someone with a visual impairment. They do have some instructional materials available. Also, the Library of Congress is a great landing spot for lots of resources on materials for the visually impaired. You can, if you want to go the route of Braille music and learning the Braille music code, the Braille music code is a free download there as a PDF. You can get most of the standard piano methods in Braille, or they will Braille them for you. The hitch is that the student has to register because they have the disability. I can't register as a teacher.
Right.
But then we use a lot of combinations of things. A lot of rote teaching, improvisation, certainly. And then I find often that the method, whichever method I'm using, just doesn't have enough material at the level that we need to stay at maybe for a little bit longer. So we do a lot of supplementing. And that's where improvisation can also be helpful in creating variations on pieces that they already know, or in making up pieces that will use concepts that they need to learn later on so they're prepared for what's coming next in the method. And then lots of things like, hey, why don't you play a little song into your voice notes on your phone or onto mom's iPad? And then we also have phone videos and iPad videos being taken during the lessons as aids for at home. And I just always have a policy with the parents that this is just for personal home use. It doesn't go on Instagram, doesn't go on TikTok, Facebook, or any other social media platform. It doesn't get shared wholesale.
So you could almost make a private YouTube like playlist for them to practice along with at home.
Oh,
Is that
sure.
kind of what
Or
you're getting
sometimes
at?
we play things into their phone. I just have to remember that I need to give the title of what we're doing a count off so that the student will know when to come in, and then they can save those themselves.
Yes, those are all wonderful things. I do a lot of those too. Something else I have found in the last couple years is backing tracks on YouTube in specific keys. So there are backing tracks in C major that have more of like a rock sound. There are smooth, relaxing backing track. You can find them just about any sound or thing you would want. And so that's something I use a lot with visually impaired students because it's something different. They think it's really fun to improvise with, and we'll use whatever skills we're currently working on. If that's broken chords, we will do broken chord improvisation in C major with this like bluesy situation. There's also a couple of apps that I like to use, and I can't remember, I might have to send you the name of it, but it has beautiful backing tracks in every major and minor key for use with scales and arpeggios. And you can adjust the tempo, you can adjust the sound, but it's like a one-time purchase $4 app. And it has been really cool for kids to use at home when playing pentascales or even practicing their scales and chords because that's another great way to learn the piano, is to play scales and chords. So I use a lot of backing tracks like that with them. They think that's very, very fun.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful and really motivating. And just anything creative, I like to encourage, because then the student is fully invested because it's their work. It's not something they're being made to do.
Yes.
It sounds like this whole conversation has been really centered around creativity and confidence and really the love of music, because Braille has only been brought up once. That's been a topic of conversation, has been asked me about Braille. And I'm like, I just don't think she needs that right now. I mean, in the future, I understand, if she wants to get there, but I just don't see a reason to rush that.
Yeah.
Whereas 5 years ago when we started, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got to learn Braille music. I'm thinking I've got to do all this stuff. It was more just coming alongside her and having a wonderful patient mother helping me alongside.
Well, I think you're right, Jaclyn, in that it's whatever works for the student.
Mm-hmm.
In my particular situation, I needed to learn a little bit about the Braille music code and about Braille piano methods because that was right for my student. For another student, it's not approachable, and so we don't do it. So we use whatever we need to use. But I think Elizabeth hit on something really wonderful there, which goes back to our validation thing, is that I firmly in my heart believe that it's not about the music. Certainly our students need to learn to read however they need to read, to count, to be able to play proficiently and express themselves, be creative. But that's just the way we reach the person.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's all about that person, and music is just the way we do it and the way we help build them up and validate them and make them feel like they're really a part of all of society and not just something less than that's pushed aside until, it's something that can be exploited for gain.
Yes. And I think so much of the intimidation factor, really, for a lot of teachers who might be approached by people saying, my child has a visual impairment, my child has a hearing impairment, my child has autism, is just the unknown, because we have not experienced those things. And those are all very physical experiences. We can relate to maybe other neurodiversities a little better than physical limitations, because if you have not gone through that, it feels intimidating to give suggestions for someone else's personal journey. But you are a person just like the students who are approaching you or the teachers who are recommending you. And if you can keep in mind that humanity is what makes you compassionate and what makes you so curious and thoughtful, that can also be a wonderful motivator for figuring out what works best.
This is amazing. I cannot thank you guys enough for all of these. So I just have a few last follow-up questions. Let's talk about teacher support. Let's say that somebody is approached, they've never done this before, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And these are all some really, really great tips. They still kind of feel like they're, out. And I have never felt so alone in the teacher world as when I first started this little girl. And I don't say that in a negative way against any teachers at all. It was that situation. I guess finding support or mentorship, maybe, I don't know if you guys know of any Facebook pages.
There is one. It's a teacher support page for teaching students with disabilities. That's a great place to start. Lots of teachers, thousands of teachers from all over the world. And it's a safe place to ask questions, I have found.
And of course, Elizabeth, you need to mention all of your seminars that you do and all of your workshops as well.
Thank you. Dr. Price, I think you have some courses on Piano Inspires, Francis Clark Center too.
Yeah, we did. There's the inclusive teaching course, which deals with a lot of different subjects on the Francis Clark Center website. There's also the inclusive piano teaching blog, which is currently not real active, but Beth Bauer and Melissa Martiros and I used to write articles there. There's some information on teaching students with visual impairments there as well. And then there's lots of information and on communication and reframing our vocabulary in autism and piano study at Basic Teaching Vocabulary.
And something else I will say is one reason why teachers might feel alone is because there are not piano-specific resources for teaching these populations of kids. I have hopes that it will be available in the future, and I think there's lots of good research being done right now by pedagogy students and professionals that are getting us in the right direction, but we're behind. So I often will look to special education research and read journals and read books on teaching individuals, educational psychology and all kinds of things, watch webinars that are not music specific, just to gain a couple of nuggets of information, and then I can apply it to my own students. But there are resources, but you do have to be a bit of a persistent digger.
and you have to be a sleuth, and you have to cast your net wide sometimes, but it's definitely worth it.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I will grab some of these and put them on the show notes so that we at least have a little bit to start with. I never thought about looking at other special education resources outside of music. See, there's another one of those where you think, oh, I have so many moments where I just want to do like a little head smack, like, why didn't you think about that before? But this is why we collaborate and discuss and talk. And I'll definitely put that disability page that's on Facebook because that's helped me a lot. Well, I have to say, I am just so thankful that you guys came on and agreed to talk about this. And I am very thankful for all that you contribute for piano teachers because we really need each other. And this is the kind of stuff that I really want to be talking about. And I want other teachers to know that you're not alone. There are resources out there. And Elizabeth, we'll definitely have to put your course on there as well. I've been eyeing that for a while myself, so you'll probably have me on there soon. So thanks, guys. Dr. Price, is there any specific way if anybody wants to reach out or website, that kind of thing?
People are always welcome to email, and we'll have the email in your show notes.
Okay.
I just want to thank you, Jaclyn, for asking me to be here today and for all the work that you're doing to help out piano teachers. I think the more we can do that, the better. And of course, Elizabeth, it's just always a joy to spend some time with you as well. Yes. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Jackie. It's really a treat and a special treat to be with Dr. Price as well, because there's really nobody I'd rather talk about these things with. So thank you very much for kind of shedding a light on something that teachers may not know a lot about.
Absolutely. Well, I was so thrilled that I actually got both of you at the same time. So, and then Elizabeth, absolutely, people got to find you on Instagram. Yeah. And you're on Facebook too. Yeah. I think you share the same stuff on both.
I do pretty much. My blog has been taking a little bit of a respite over the summer, but I'm kicking that back up with a new series of seminars, and we're also kicking the Piano Teachers Book Club back up as well. That's taken a couple years off, so we're gonna pick that back up as well with going through a pedagogy book together. So lots of fun things.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for everything that you guys have given us today. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, and we'll just be sure to keep following. So thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, teachers, for joining us today. If you know another teacher who has been considering taking on a student with similar needs to what we have discussed today, I would be so grateful if you would share these last two episodes with them. That is episode 17 and episode 18 of the Music Teacher Mastermind podcast. I'd also like to extend a big thank you once again to Dr. Elizabeth Davis-Everhart and Dr. Scott Price for coming on the show and sharing their insights on a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Now, as we are in October of 2024, if you are looking for a fun activity for your younger student or students before Halloween, be sure to join my email list. I will be giving away a free wrote short story featuring 4 fun pieces that go along with a cute little tale about Coda the dog, who is super excited to go trick-or-treating, but secretly is scared of running into a creepy kitty cat, which we all know is just a bunch of craziness, but it makes a cute story. My pre-reading students are really excited to share this at their Halloween recital, and I'm sure your students will love it too. As an email subscriber, you'll also get a discount on my upcoming holiday bundle, which is going to be perfect for those upcoming recitals. The bundle will include short stories featuring a winter story, a Christmas story with Santa, a nativity story, and a Hanukkah story as well. Just visit www.pianocats.com, that's cats with a K, and click on Piano Teachers Go Here. From there, you can subscribe by clicking on Piano Teacher links and newsletter for lots of freebies for your studio, business, and students. And speaking of holiday recitals, be sure to stay tuned to the Music Teacher Mastermind podcast. I am really excited about some upcoming episodes. One is about teaching rote music, holiday music, and even some insights on SEO and marketing. You really won't want to miss it. But in the meantime, I hope that you all keep practicing, keep teaching, and keep loving, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.